Big news, everyone. The Society of Massage Archives is officially a 501c3 nonprofit. Greetings. I am Kirby Clark Ellis, president of the Society of Massage Archives. This is a huge milestone, not just for us at SOMA, but for the entire massage therapy community. SOMA is dedicated to preserving and sharing the rich history of our profession, from rare documents and forgotten pioneers to the stories that have shaped this vital practice. We are making sure that our past is never lost. And now, as an official nonprofit, your support of the Society of Massage Archives means more than ever. Your donations are tax deductible, helping us to collect, digitize, and share the untold stories of massage therapy. Want to be a part of history? Here's how you can help. Become a founding supporter, join our Founders Campaign, and be recognized as one of the first 50 donors who made SOMA possible. Or become a recurring contributor when you pledge $20 or more to help us build and sustain this initiative for generations to come. Finally, you can help us out a great deal by spreading the word. Share this video and encourage others to preserve massage history. Your support ensures that future generations of therapists know where we came from and where we're going. Join the Founders Campaign today at societyofmassagearchives.org and make history with us. The past is in our hands. Let's preserve it, one story at a time. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of the Society of Massage Archives. These interviews and commentaries represent the recollections of both the hosts and the guests, and as such are subject to the occasional slight inaccuracies. The content here is for informational and educational purposes only. You should conduct your own historical research when determining the veracity of any of the statements made within. Greetings and welcome to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives, where we delve into the rich tapestry of massage therapy's past, explore its evolution, and share the stories that have shaped this vital practice. Today is Monday, September 15th, 2025. I am your host, Kirby Clark Ellis, and I'm joined today with Nicole Miller. After an exciting career in higher education administration, Nicole acquired a certificate in massage therapy, inspired by her personal experiences as a client of massage therapy. During those experiences, Nicole developed an appreciation for the potential of massage therapy's impact on the biopsychosocial model of care. For the past 20 years, fueled by her veneration of massage therapy, she has blended her experiences in education and massage therapy practice, while applying those skills to educate and care for others. As a clinical massage therapist, Nicole has supported thousands of patients through the power of massage therapy and community outreach initiatives. Now, she enjoys sharing those experiences to help massage therapists through the power of education. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you for having me. I really am grateful to be here.
Yes, it's so great to get to connect with you again. This is our second conversation together, and our first one related to SOMA. And now that I think about it, I think you might be the first New York massage therapist we've had here on the podcast. So I'm excited about that perspective as well.
Me too. Thank you again. I really appreciate all the work that you are doing for us current therapists and on behalf of our future therapists, the students that we are educating in today's education institutions across the U.S. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. And well, that's really, preserving this history, this where we've come from, the people who did this work for us to have what we have now, for future generations to have is really one of the driving forces here. So I appreciate hearing that, Nicole. But let's get to you. Let's start at the beginning. What pulled you into the world of massage therapy in the first place?
Sure. So way back when, I used to be in higher education administration. I was assistant dean for student life at some colleges in Maine and New York. And I've always loved education ever since I graduated with my undergraduate in 1993. And dare I age myself there? But along the pathway, I became a massage patient. I had an incredible experience with a massage therapist, Michelle Slater, up in Maine, Bangor, Maine. And I had had a fracture of my spine in three spots as a teenager. And so in my 20s, I still had a lot of symptoms from that original accident, which include paralysis at times with my left arm and pain. And I was really losing more and more function as time went by. And out of all the healthcare providers that I visited, Michelle was the one who resolved it through neuromuscular therapy. Since that original time with her, I became a regular massage therapy patient. And continuing with massage therapy, the problem has never returned since then. Years later, when I wasn't particularly satisfied with my career because I was dealing with a lot of negative situations on campus, And I dare I say I was kind of burnt out. Add to that, I was having a hearing impairment that was increasing, a familial conduction deafness. And so I thought, maybe massage therapy would be the right career for me because people end up leaving happy and healthier. And that's the experience that I wanted to participate in versus what I was experiencing in the higher education realm. I also thought maybe it would be a good career for someone who was hearing challenged as well, because we use our hands to communicate. So I literally made the leap. And in 2003, I was 32 years old. I left my really great high paying job filled with benefits and retirement and all of these things. I sold my furniture, I sold my china, I left my nice apartment and moved into a tiny little studio where my futon couch was also my bed. But I did all of that to go back to massage school so I could afford it and I was able to pay for it up front. I was fortunate that way. And a year later, I became a massage therapist and I have not looked back since that day. I have loved every single moment and I have absolutely no regrets.
Well, that almost clears up the first question I was itching. It sounds like, that was a lot of sacrifice to choose to go to massage therapy. I assume it sounds like you would agree that it was worth it.
Absolutely, 100%. As I say to our students in our classes today, and just to kind of support your listeners, I'm the director of massage therapy at Northeast College of Health Sciences located in New York. So, every year we have new students, and we've just started the second year here. And I've said to them in the classroom, massage therapy is not just a profession, it's a lifestyle. What you learn in school will last you a lifetime. It will change your perspective of health for your family and for yourself. I dare say I would not be the healthy person that I am today had I not chosen to become a massage therapist back in 2003. So it's an amazing profession and lifestyle.
And I really love that describing it not just as a profession, but as a lifestyle.
Mhm.
I'm one of those in the camp that believes that massage therapists, we're kind of our own subculture
Yes.
here. And that's also one of the driving forces behind Soma is recognizing that and hopefully instilling a sense of that community and culture in
Mhm.
practitioners. So to go back to the very first, as you are a massage consumer, you describe an experience with that therapist you were working with, Michelle. I'm wondering if you could dive in just a little bit deeper about what that experience maybe felt like, what perspectives it changed for you, and yeah, just really, how that kind of incited the drive to eventually go into studying massage.
I would say that experience was empowering for me. Because prior to that experience, I had been going to physicians my entire life. And my experience prior to that encounter with Michelle was kind of more of like a top-down approach, a directive approach, do what they say. And I never really took the time to explore or research. Now, mind you, this is throughout the 70s and 80s, and we didn't have access to the internet or those kinds of things. So we really weren't able to research like we are today. But I would say up until my encounter with Michelle, I was an obedient person when it came time to managing my health care. I just did what my doctor said. And with that experience that I had, the pain had gotten so bad that I would only buy pockets. I remember because I lived in Maine, I would buy LL Bean khakis because they had just the right slant in the pockets that I could put my left arm in the pocket and it stayed there all day instead of hanging. So that slant in that pant took some of the weight, the force off the shoulder and the back. And so it got really, really bad. And I got increasingly frustrated and I went to various doctors and they affirmed they could feel the tightness, they could feel what we now would refer to as trigger points, but there was nothing that could be done about it. And one of my best friends was a nurse and she said, maybe you should try massage. And up until that moment, massage had never entered my mind. It just never crossed my mind because, again, being an obedient patient, I just did what I was told and I never thought of other solutions. And so when my friend Linda recommended that, she referred me to Michelle, and it was life-changing. That first encounter with her after years of pain and numbness and reduced function, my pain reduced to about 20% of what it was. And I just couldn't believe how strong, how powerful massage was with just one session, 1 hour. And so I compared it to all the hours I spent navigating and trying to find a solution. And it just took 1 hour of massage. So I went back to her for a few more sessions for follow-up, and it completely cleared up. So at that point, I decided I needed to be more in charge of my health care. I couldn't just depend on other people to manage it for me. I needed to manage it myself and listen to other people, like my friends and their experiences.
I want to see if we can really pick this apart and maybe if I
Yeah.
can get you to articulate. It sounds like your experience with like traditional healthcare
Mhm.
physicians and the such, it sounds like they did validate your experience.
Mhm.
It sounds like they did touch these areas. I'm wondering if you can figure out and pinpoint that difference that massage therapy really made for you, or if you or if there's any awareness or if you have theories on that. Because like one of the things that we really have at our value as massage therapists is I at least try to validate what the client is going through because
Yeah.
there's so much that doesn't get validated in traditional medicine or
Yeah.
Western medicine, I suppose. And then also touch is also often missing in the medical setting. So I'm wondering if you have any ideas about what made this experience with Michelle different than if it was the time, if it was just a different approach, if you have any thoughts about that.
Yes, so certainly Michelle had a different set of eyes, as I say it. Sometimes our hands are eyes. And I've come to appreciate that because one of my dear classmates and friends from massage school was blind. And her name of her business was Eyes on You. And I thought that was fascinating because she was identifying that her hands were her eyes. And I related that back to my experience with Michelle, that her hands were her eyes that day on the table, right? So instead of just palpating and feeling those trigger points, she palpated the entire body and she made connections. So it wasn't just treating the local point, it was treating the neck, it was treating the shoulders, treating both sides. So she really exhibited functional medicine, if it or imply um, applied functional medicine. Whereas in my prior experiences, I think those physicians were dependent more on conventional medicine. I think an important difference too between the two is in conventional medicine, I think there are factors that really garnish how they can practice, right? And then sometimes limit how they can practice. Factors such as insurance expectations and laws, and even timing, right? Doctors are very busy, and so it's more difficult for them to spend more than 7 to 10 minutes per patient versus the massage therapist who can spend an entire hour. And they can sometimes acquire more knowledge somatically in that hour than your doctor can on that 3 or 4 page form that you had to fill out, right? And I tell my students now that when a patient visits you, everybody tells a story. So they tell a story verbally, voice their story, but everybody on the table tells a story too. And sometimes those stories match, sometimes they don't. And that's when it can be kind of interesting and fun when you're trying to find out why are they not matching? What's missing here? Where's the broken link? And your job is to explore verbally and physically during that engagement to find out why and then help create some links and help create some wholeness within that person. So I think that's kind of what Michelle did for me was, the doctors were listening to my story, but she also listened to that story and the story that my body shared on the table.
Definitely. Yeah, I really love that. So often we try to fit humans, organic things into systems.
Yes.
And that doesn't always have, it doesn't always reap the best harvest. Nicole, I also want to talk to you about You mentioned hearing impairment and your struggles with that. Was that happening congruent to this left arm issue that you had going on?
It was, yes.
How did that start? Can you describe that experience for me?
So the hearing impairment that I have is otosclerosis. It's a form of a conduction deafness. There are two types of deafness. There's neurodeafness, which obviously is involves the nervous system, and conduction deafness involves the hardware of the ear. So most often it affects the stapes bone. So with this type of deafness, it's usually hereditary. So we have it in my family, and it's usually passed through, and it most oftenly involves or impacts women in a family. So I have aunts who have it, and I have it as well. I'm very fortunate though, because in 2003, just before massage school, I took a big leap and decided to receive what's called an implant. So I have a prosthetic stapes bone made out of titanium in my ear, and that helped to restore a lot of my hearing and really helped me with my massage school as well. But at the time, I'll kind of go off on a tangent.
Please.
I had known basic signs and the alphabet. When I went to massage school, my friend Kathy, who was blind and deaf, needed assistance in the classroom. So we were paired together, and I could, when we were studying kinesiology, I could sign in her hands the spelling of some of the muscles to kind of help her with that. So I became fortunate enough to be able to participate in that experience, which became a whole nother story, a whole nother amazing experience in my life. Since then, I have now visited additional doctors, and before I have another implant to restore the one that I have originally, I now use hearing aids for my hearing.
Thank you for sharing all of that. What I'm getting a sense of is we have this experience with physicians
Mhm.
and experience with massage where you have this slowing down, but then you also share this story about you're in massage school, you're absorbing all this learning, but then there's also this other student where you're also having to slow down. And I'm just wondering if this experience, I can't imagine how you go through something like this and it not make you a stronger communicator.
Absolutely.
Can you speak to that, Nicole?
Absolutely. What I learned from my experience with Kathy was to really be aware of your surroundings. So, one of the examples I give is very early on, trying to help her know when it was break time, right? Time for when class would end. So, I would do certain tappings in certain areas, but then she quickly identified to me, I know it's break. And I asked her how, and she said, I could feel the rumbling on the floors of all the students getting up. And I thought, oh my gosh, I never would have sensed that myself, right? You're just looking visually about in regarding people standing up and that it's break time. But her sense was completely different. And additionally, I learned from her on the table because when we first started effleurage, we were all excited, right? We're doing our passes, we're doing our effleurage. And then when it came time for Kathy to apply, I was standing next to her while she was applying to another student. And after a few passes, she pulled her hands off the person's quads because she said they were on fire, because she could feel the heat that was generating from those first few strokes, but we couldn't feel that in our palpation. So, through those experiences and working with her, I realized the world is so different. And it's important that when you communicate or engage with people, it's you have to extend beyond what is expressed to you verbally. If people are interested in understanding this topic, there's a great book called An Immense World, which is phenomenal because the author talks about how we live in an experience based on what our senses offer us and the capacity of those senses. So if you take an elephant or a chimpanzee or a scorpion, and you put all of us into a room, how we would visualize that room, how we would interpret that room would be vastly different. And the same thing can even happen among humans based on experiences like traumatic experiences and so forth. So, tying into my experiences with Kathy and learning from her, compounding that with what I've learned from trauma victims, and then some of my the books that I've read from folks like Ed Young in Men's World, or Lieutenant Charlie Hogue, who wrote a book, Once a Warrior, Always a Warrior, collectively combining all of these reflections and input has shaped how I approach people. And even now, when I work with students, we teach them methods on how to approach a massage table and how do you step into a room and how you place your body next to the table so that the body can sense where you are in proximity to the person. And another example that we share with them is before you touch the person, touch the padding of the table next to that area because the body will absorb and start to interpret that touch is about to happen. So there's a kind of sequence you can apply to help that body and that person prepare for that first touch. So there's so much more I can talk about and expand, and I'm sorry for going off on tangents, but that experience with Kathy really was the genesis to how I approach my work and now what I teach.
What a blessing. And also, like, another thing that I think about are like these webs of connectivity
Yes.
of that
Yeah.
experience enriching you, but also now that you're an educator, you're so brilliant, Nicole. I love having conversations with you because I wish I knew how your mind works. It's got to be such a blessing for the students that get to interact with you. I'm also going to we're just going to off-road together, Nicole. Mind
Let's do
speaking.
it.
I don't want to make any assumptions. Did Kathy finish the program and get a license?
She did, and she is a former Paris Silver Olympiad. She, I think, got her silver in Japan, and she was a tandem cyclist and a powerhouse on her team, and she did phenomenal. She was nationally ranked, internationally ranked. Unfortunately, many years ago, she passed because of a tragic accident in a home. But she was an amazing massage therapist, and she worked on many athletes in the Syracuse community for years before her passing.
I just wow, so unfortunate that she's passed away, but
Mhm.
I also this is part of our richness as a community. So thank you for sharing parts of Kathy's story with us, Nicole. That's awesome.
Thank
That's
you for letting me.
yeah. I mean, like that's stuff out there that isn't getting on stories that aren't being told. That's the oh, I crave that stuff, Nicole. Um, thank you again. I want to know how far into being a client, a consumer of massage therapy, was it until you decided to take the leap and become a student of massage therapy? What's the timeline look like there?
Yeah, so it was 6 years. So I started receiving massage therapy in 1997. And I was going through graduate school at the time, and I completed my graduate school program in 2000 and moved back here to New York to be closer with my family and still continued in higher education. But again, was dealing with a lot of negativity, judicial affairs and residence life, and a lot of trauma. And so it was in 2003 that I decided to, like I said, sell everything, move into the tiny apartment, and change it all.
Gotcha. Let me ask you, just because I want to, it sounds like you were based in New York, and then perhaps for your profession, or maybe education, you made the move to Maine.
Correct. Mhm.
Okay. What was that like? Did you have any like sort of support system set up in Maine to help you succeed, or just kind of go in and out on your own and yeah, an adventure kind of?
At that time, I went up, I moved to Maine and I took a position at a college there. And then after a year, it allowed me to be eligible to attend there for my master's program. So I was working full time and then going to school full time as well. And it was a great experience because culturally, Maine is very different than New York. And what I really appreciated about my time there were people of Maine are very humble people, very simple people. And by that, I mean they don't complicate their lives like we New Yorkers are very good at. And so now when you think about Zen living and, this type of lifestyle that we're all trying to get back to, Maine has always lived that entirely in their culture. So I really appreciated that about Mainers, as they called themselves, us maniacs, which were the transplants, the people from out of the area. We had a lot to learn from them. And I appreciated that time and a lot of my mentors there. And as I said, I decided after completing my grad school, I'd like to come back to New York and be near my family again. So I made the trip back down.
Your BS and your MS were both in business management, right?
Correct. Business management and organization. And I came to find out that I was a terrible business person in a lot of ways because I was not a person that was about making money. It wasn't about trying to become rich for me. And it's hard to be in that world and not have that as part of your fabric. I learned in the early 2000s, I was really better at organizational development than business management. And so I did take classes in training and development and organizational management and kind of navigated more towards that side of things. If I had to do it all over again, I might have chosen a career like healthcare management or educational management, some of these programs that we see more today that weren't so available back then. Back then, it was everybody took basically business management. So, like I said, I found out I was very good because I wasn't concerned about making a lot of profit. It was really about doing right by people and doing good things and developing good processes and developing skills and basically helping others. And perhaps now, as I'm talking, that might be another reason why I was interested in massage therapy.
It's as you're talking about this, I've tried my hand at sole proprietorship a couple of times, and making money can sometimes be our Achilles heel in massage therapy. Some people are really great at it. They can do both. They can be a great practitioner, they can be really caring, and they can also do really well for themselves financially. For me, when money's involved, it diminishes I can't get those two to sync up, and I've stopped fighting it at this point, but I to that feeling. I'm wondering, do you find any like transferable skills either from business management classes or also like your involvement? I'm assuming Greek life was somewhat going on in your experience with the college.
Absolutely. In fact, when I arrived at the college in Maine, one of my jobs was to help support or incite a cultural transformation within the college. Because at that time, I was in charge of residence life. And imagine there were 7 Greek organizations, and they actually lived in the residence halls. It's not that they had their own buildings. So they were really integrated in the residence hall. So we had to tighten down on residence life rules and judicial affairs. And the students did not really appreciate me in the very beginning, especially the Greeks. And,
Imagine that.
and it was funny. I'll never forget one of them. His name was Wally, and he came to me in 1998. And I think the Greeks were playing poker with me at the time because here I'm this administrator and they've had a lot of changes and they're not really happy about it. And their head of their clubs, their faculty or staff advisor, had decided not to do it anymore. And I think it was because of all the changes, right? He was tired of hearing them. So he left the position and they needed a new faculty or staff advisor. And Wally came to me on behalf of all the Greeks and asked if I would be their advisor. And I looked at Wally and I said, if you think that by inviting me to be your advisor means I'm going to be easier on you folks, you couldn't be more wrong. Now, I'm going to invite you, Wally, to go back to your 7 Greek organizations, your council, and share that opinion with them. And I also want you to challenge them that if they want someone who can help them thrive and grow and develop and live and work within this school, that I can help you with. But if we're going to do this, you're going to have to listen to me and know that I'm not going to compromise. And so he went back to the Greeks, the seven groups, and they then came back to me and said, okay, will you please be our advisor? So I was their advisor for 2 years. And I explained to them when I work with students or people, I prefer to hold them to higher standards. I'm going to be that accountability partner that nudges you to be the best that you can be. And that's what we did. So it really helped them and the other students who are non-Greeks engage better, and it helped the Greek organizations integrate better with other campus offices and departments. And it was a good experience overall for everybody, but it wasn't easy.
The part that I love about that story is expectations. Um,
Yes.
and sometimes what you expect out of life is not necessarily what you're going to get. And making it all work like that. And it also brings up a question I wanted to ask you. Did you have, and maybe I'm jumping the gun and I'm muddling the timeline, but that's okay too. Did you have any expectations going in as a massage therapy student, either based or no, before that, I want to know as a consumer, did you have preconceived notions about massage therapy and what it could do and how those were kind of turned on their heads? And then also being a client and going to massage therapy school, how that might have changed as well.
Sure. So my imprint, and as I tell our students, we all have an imprint of massage therapy, right? That first transformative experience. So my imprint was medical or orthopedic massage, and that's what I had, loved for many years. But then as the stress of my work continued, I then engaged in relaxation and stress management massage and found that oh, there's this whole other area besides the orthopedic. So when I started school, I did have that idea that massage does support the biology of a person, but also the psychological health as well. And I wanted to be that massage therapist that would be able to support both of those, that could change on the fly and do whatever is important for somebody. The one thing I was missing when I went to massage school was like the spa experience and what that was like. So I did work for an upscale spa in Syracuse right afterwards to help me get that exposure. And I remember too, like literally weeks out of school, I called up a lot of major spas and I said, can I just come and shadow? Can I just come and visit? And some of them were taken aback, confused, right? Like, why would you just want to come and visit? But I did. I went in and I shadowed and I observed and I received tours of various spas because I just wanted to learn what is this world like because I had not had that experience. So, and that was great because it really helped me develop that full umbrella experience of what massage is like. And as I say to students and clients, there's a scale, it's a spectrum. And you can't go wrong with any type of massage. It's just a matter of choosing or receiving the right one for you at the right time. That's the key aim, or that's what results in the best experience for you.
Oh gosh, that is so smart of you, I think. Do you know how many times, in my experience, my limited experience as an educator, do you know how many times I've gone in, students just want what they feel is the meat and potatoes of the massage education
Right.
experience. They're here, they want to go medical, they want to learn all of this stuff that can be rehabilitative. They don't want to engage in, they don't want to do any hot stones. They want to do anything that's body wraps. They don't want to do any of this stuff that's frou-frou stuff. So for you to have this drive to at least experience and engage in it and figure out what it's all about and immerse yourself in that, I think is so wise because so often people just put their blinders onto that and they're like, we're just going to do this. This is where we're going. And they don't even give a hoot about that. So I think that's incredible.
Well, one of the stories that I like to share with my students is I explain to them, I have a client who is a wife of a Vietnam veteran. And so he lives with severe PTSD, and she has secondary trauma as a result of that.
Mm.
So when she comes in and visits with me, I support her with relaxation and stress reduction massage. I have a client, she is a realtor and she is in her car driving quite a bit. And so when she comes in to visit with me, provide orthopedic massage to treat her thumbs or her low back. And I have a client who is a cancer survivor. And so when she visits with me, I provide to her massage for those living with cancer. And I say to my students, that client is all the same person. They are the same person. And depending on what they need for that day, that's what I choose that in terms of methods and modalities. This particular client has been with me now for over 20 years. And for fun, as I was preparing for a student lecture, I calculated she's visited with me over 400 times in 20 years. And this year, she came out of the room and she just was shaking her head and she said, I don't know how you do it, Nicole. All these times, and it's different every single time. And so I explained to the students, that's a master massage therapist. It's not being the best at a particular modality. The master massage therapist is going to be able to adjust according to what that client needs. So if they need relaxation massage for the day because their psychological health care needs are greater than their biological health care needs, then that's what we're going to deliver that day. And then on other days when the biological needs are greater than the psychological, then that's what we deliver. But we ask that client each day when they come in, what do they want? What do they envision? And we apply what the methods and tools we have to support that particular need.
I have to go in on this. I'll, I'll play the devil's advocate here just a
Okay,
little bit
yeah,
because
good.
that's so opposite of what we hear in massage therapy marketing strategies.
Correct.
We hear the importance placed on niching and really finding what you're good at and focusing on one thing. But you're describing this, it's not necessarily like a jack of all trades, master of none. It's really having as much in your toolbox as possible.
Right.
I struggle sometimes to find a balance between the two, and I'm just wondering if you have any more thoughts on that.
I think a hybrid approach is ideal for a massage therapist. It's fine to have some specialties because there are times where you might have a client that's all they can tolerate, right? So if you have a client who needs lymphatic massage or manual lymphatic drainage, then having that specialty is awesome, right, for that particular client because not everybody can mix it up like that client I described. Some people might need a very specific type of massage all the time. So I think it's okay to have a hybrid approach. And there are times where I do that. There are times or with some patients where I may only do trauma-informed care for them. And I may never be able to get to that point of doing an orthopedic style massage. So for that client, I would refer to them to exercise management because the exercise might be able to support that orthopedic
Mm.
need for them when they can't tolerate that touch that we can provide. So there are times when those niches, when those specialties are really important, but then also having that ability to adapt to people whose needs will change from time to time.
For sure,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, and also, I'm going to toot my own horn here. I think that's also part of the advantage of working in a franchise system because you don't know what you're going to get on any sort
Yes.
of. A bulk of it might be people who just want to relax, zone out, take a break from the world. But you'll also get people that, are showing up on the worst day of their life. Something really horrible just happened to them, or they've just had an injury. They want to rehab that back to where they can do some more of their stuff. So I love that approach, that hybrid approach, Nicole.
Yeah. Well, and it's almost like when you think of a franchise system, it's like a grocery store. Everybody has to get groceries, right? And everybody in that store has a different story in their life. And it's the same in a franchise or a wellness center or, these large scale organizations that you're going to have a lot of people there from a lot of different backgrounds and experiences.
I would just say to follow, I love that analogy. Follow that, you got to have different ingredients, and
Yes.
that's, you know. Let me ask you, Nicole. So you attended massage therapy school in 2003
Mhm.
in New York?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And at the time, New York has been regulating massage therapy since like 67, I think is the what I
Yes.
have notes.
Mhm.
Um, I'm wondering, can you share anything about New York history and maybe what looked different at the time? Because you mentioned neuromuscular therapy and trigger point therapy in your intro. I'm wondering if you can talk about how maybe you've seen like an evolution or change in trends in your time in massage therapy.
Specific to New York?
Sure.
Yeah. So New York is real, as you know, is really interesting. We've been highly regulated for a long time. We have one of the longest histories of regulations. And I think my understanding, because there's not a lot written about it, and we're still learning through organizations such as yours that are doing the research for it. But my understanding was it really generated because of population. New York City is one of the most highly populated areas in the world. We have a huge population here. And culturally in New York City, there's various cultures there practicing massage way back when, from Eastern to Western to everything in between. So a lot of the New York rules and regulations have been developed to, I think, with a good intent to develop a baseline and foundations for practice and to help keep people safe. But there are some times when law can actually limit as well. So, to give you a good example, in New York State, we have a requirement that people have to have a minimum of 50 hours of Eastern massage in their primary education. And when I went through massage school, the focus was to teach us to learn enough to practice that component of the test at whatever percentage, whether it was 14% of the New York State test at the time, but to get us to pass that part of the exam. And sometimes I say we may learn enough, just enough to be dangerous, but not really enough to be proficient, right? And so I think that was one of those situations. And I'm not saying Eastern massage is dangerous, but what I'm saying is that sometimes we learn just enough that we really we can't apply it. We can't really use it functionally. And so here's 50 hours of our curriculum being dedicated to this topic that people leave school and they're really not proficient enough to use it. So one of the things we've done in our school is we actually have 75 hours dedicated to it. So we wanted to expand on that piece so people can actually apply more when they graduate, have a better usage of Eastern massage in their toolbox. So that's just one example, and I think we're seeing some growth there in terms of content and how we apply it based on the New York State application and what the requirements are for their testing. To give you another example, in New York State, 450 of our 1,000 hours is dedicated to the sciences. So it's 200 hours of anatomy, it's 150 of kineo or myology. Within those, there has to be 50 of that dedicated to neurology and then 100 hours for pathology. So we have these constructs which are helpful, but back in the day, we were just literally lectured and taught from the book, about these topics enough to get us to pass the exam. And there was some application in the hands-on, but looking back, I feel like there was a fracture between them that they really weren't synergized. So now today in New York, almost all our educators in schools weave and connect the sciences with the hands-on even better than we did 20 years ago. So it's not just having a lecture of anatomy, it's how do you use it in the classroom, right? And with modalities. So one example is in our program, when we explored the lymphatic system and anatomy, the week after that is when we taught lymphatic massage. So we made sure that we were connecting those two together. And then after that, we had clinical opportunities for our students to apply it. So it was three, two connections between these three types of classes. So we're seeing a lot more of that. And I think that comes not only from experience, but also from many tools and support from leaders like Susan Salvo, who has dedicated her life to helping massage therapy educators develop practices like this. So I think her work and the work of many others has encouraged us to teach beyond the test and to really teach to the therapy. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm also loving, I'm connecting it back to something that you said way back at the start of our conversation about your understanding of like education, right? And how that has grown and evolved for you.
Yes, I love education. I could never leave it, even when I went to massage school. I was a tutor in the school and to help other students. And then when I graduated, I became licensed in October 2004. And in November 2004, I reached out to Crouse Health because I learned they had a pregnancy massage program for expecting parents. And I wanted to shadow that and learn what that was like. So I volunteered a class or two. And then they said, "Hey, our instructor's leaving. Will you teach it for us?" And that was my first experience in massage education. And then I started teaching more classes for the program. And lo and behold, before long, they made me integrative healthcare coordinator at Crouse Health. So I served in that realm for many years. And much of that was dedicated to public health education, as well as continuing education for massage therapists and physical therapists and nurses and so forth. And all of it was based on integrative healthcare and massage therapy. So I could never leave education. I always had to be a part of it. And then along the way, I enjoyed teaching at Morrisville State College and Onondaga School of Therapeutic Massage, where I graduated from, and now Northeast College of Health Sciences.
Wow, quite an accomplishment. And it really speaks, I'm getting this sense that you love to learn.
Mhm.
Because again, you're throwing yourself into an experience just to shadow and learn and absorb some stuff. And I think that's gotta make for really, I mean, superb superstar kind of educator.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, the best writers are really good readers. The
Yes.
best massage therapists are people who get on the table often. And I think the best educators are people who just love to learn.
Absolutely. And Kyle Herholzer, who's one of our faculty, we were just talking and he made he shared a great reflection. And he said, being a massage therapist helps you be a better massage therapy educator, and being an educator helps you be a better massage therapist. And I support that concept 1,000%.
I couldn't agree more. And yeah, just hopefully we can keep inspiring people to explore those kind of things and really not just explore them, but also really sharpen themselves in each of those aspects. I just had this conversation with a therapist in California.
Oh,
And I'm talking to you in New York. California and New York are kind of a part of this group of states that I like to refer to as the Maverick states.
okay.
We're all a patchwork across this country in our
Yes.
regulation and stuff, but specifically California, New York, and even I throw Texas in there too, because Texas has licensing, but they kind of do, they beat their own drum too largely. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to what that experience is in New York, because it's not a voluntary certification like California has, but
Right.
it's also not licensing like the rest of the country has. And I'm wondering if you can speak to me about that language difference and any sort of challenges that maybe that's provided of being one of those really what I call the maverick states. And I mean no disrespect for that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We understand that 100%. So with New York, we have again this 1,000 hour requirement, and my opinions regarding that have waxed and waned over the years. And if you asked me 10 years ago, if we needed 1,000 hours. I would have said no, right? I would have said less. But because of what we're seeing here in New York, and especially with regards to veterans massage, I do understand why we have the 1,000 hours. I'm not necessarily, it's time for us to take a look at our state and our requirements and figure out what's the best practice going forward. But one of the things I do like about New York now is that I think we were pretty well prepared for the advent of the significant amount of massage therapy provided to veterans through the whole health program. And we were able to support the Syracuse VA throughout that process. I'll maybe stop there. Maybe we can come back to that in case you want to learn a little bit more about that history. But looking at those standards, I can see why we have them, and it equips us to work in various environments, and especially like places like hospitals. But keep in mind that there are a lot of barriers for people who come from other states into our state, and that's a big problem. I know of many massage therapists who were trained and educated in other states who have significant histories, I mean, 10 years plus. And because they don't have that 50 hours of Eastern or that 50 hours of neurology specifically identified on their transcripts, they can't practice here. I do wish our state had a better mechanism to support these folks and allow them to practice here, because I do believe practice and experience beyond school can be just as powerful as what you learn in school too. So I wish we would develop a better system for that. I hope this kind of speaks to what you're trying to learn more about.
Yes, absolutely. And definitely. And then also what you're talking about, the 1,000 hours, it's also reminding me, our good friends in Nebraska also have a 1,000 hour requirement. I'm wondering, do you know anything about how their 1,000 hours matches up against New York's off the top of your head?
I do not know.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thinking on my part.
Yeah.
There are a couple of things that I absolutely have to ask you. I have had a conversation with native New Yorker, Devonna Willis.
Okay.
But in her episode, I believe she was doing more PTA stuff at
Yes.
her time in New York before she became licensed in Arizona. So I absolutely have to ask you, you went to school in 2003. I would be absolutely just awful if I didn't ask you. We had a lot going on at that time, especially in New York, right after the 9/11 attacks, which also, we just had the 24th anniversary just last week.
Mhm.
And so I'm wondering if you could speak in any way about that and what it was kind of like to be back in New York at that time following those attacks. And
New York is a very interesting state geographically. There's upstate and downstate, and upstaters refer to downstate as the city in Westchester County and those counties right outside. Sometimes they can be two different worlds, right? And sometimes we've even joked maybe we should separate in two different states because culturally we're so different, right? But 9/11 really united New York. And it's one of those moments where we were all New Yorkers and united in our feelings. And every year when that anniversary nears, it takes us back to that day. I still remember the moment that I was listening to a morning radio station and I heard about the first plane hitting the building. And I was on the college campus and I finished getting ready. I was at the end of it and I went to the student center and saw the news of the second plane hitting. And we went right into trauma mode at that time because some of our students had families that lived in New York. Some of them were from New York City. So we created kind of a trauma crisis center for students and were able to get involved, get support from counseling services and so forth. And I remember our students that day being terrified because they couldn't contact their relatives. We didn't have the telecommunications systems in place like we do now. And a lot of it was shut down there. So I'll never forget that day and that moment that I heard it, and then the subsequent reactions of the students. And later I revisited it because I was doing some of my education and pro bono clinic work at Clear Path for Veterans, and they had a speaker, Bonnie Owens, who was a psychotherapist who specialized in trauma, and most of her work was treating the first responders that responded to 9/11. So I was entranced by her lecture. And her lecture and my work there kind of started that whole piece about, we need to learn more about trauma and how massage impacts it and how it can impact massage therapy. So I often reflect on her words and what she shared while working with the responders. To the point now, a few years ago, I created a program called Compassion in Action. And CIA, as we call it, we provide triage massage to major emergencies in our area. We did it during COVID. We went in the height of COVID, to some of the hospitals and provided massage to nurses and emergency staff and first responders. And we've also have been involved in some other major community impact incidences since then. Sorry again for going off on another tangent, but all of these kinds of experiences kind of have created a sequence along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, that's life, right? One thing
Yeah.
leads to another, and then they interlocked with things that happened previously. And
Yeah.
um,
I kind of think like sometimes my first responder work has to do with feeling helpless during that 9/11, because I remember right after that happened, I went to Red Cross was looking for volunteers, and I signed up to volunteer to go down to New York and help. And so we were all on standby and waiting. And it just got to a point where they said, the survivors are so few, and there really wasn't much we could do. And I remember feeling so empty and sad and guilty because we were in upstate and in our comfort place, and our downstate friends didn't have that same experience. So I think that that might have been one of the seeds that were planted along the way that inspired some of the work later.
would it be inaccurate for me to name that kind of like survivor's guilt, is what I'm
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have been challenged with for decades, and not until 2016 did I finally get a handle of that.
I'm wondering, we don't have to if you don't want to, but
Yeah.
anything specific you could share from that journey and how you were able to develop a handle on that?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm very comfortable in talking about this, that, you know, I feel like I've always been a very empathetic and compassionate person and would clearly put people before myself all the time. And to kind of frame this, I spent thousands of hours volunteering for veterans, setting up pro bono clinics and parents with perinatal anxiety, stress, and depression. I spent years doing this at Crouse Health. And while helping others, my health became challenged. And I ended up developing an autoimmune. And I think that development was a result of a recipe. And that recipe included the stress of being a mom with twins and the stress of work, but also the compassion fatigue that developed from my work. And I think that was perhaps one of the largest components in that recipe. And it was relentless. It was kind of all the time. And for years, I felt like I had to feel sad or guilty. If someone visited me, I would treat them, but I felt almost like dutiful that I had to feel sad and guilty, until I came to realize that you don't have to feel sad and guilty when you work with people who are really sad. That in fact, it is okay after you have a day of working with really sad, very sick people. It's okay for you to go home and feel joy. You're permitted to do that. And I learned this from some of the veterans work that I did. Colonel Earl Fontenot, former Lieutenant Colonel, talked about how when we celebrate Memorial Day, it doesn't always have to be sad, because veterans or those that are deceased, especially in the line of duty, they did those things so that we could enjoy life. So they would prefer us not to be sad. And I remembered that message, and then I applied it to my work, that it's okay for me to be happy. It's okay for me to be joyful. And the more that I am, the better caretaker I can be. That revelation really occurred in 2016.
Also, gosh, what a crazy time in our lives as
Right?
Americans,
Yeah.
2016, so fraught.
The Society of Massage Archives wishes to congratulate Dr. Patricia Benjamin on the occasion of the 10th anniversary of her book, The Emergence of the Massage Therapy Profession in North America, A History in Archetypes. To honor this milestone, SOMA is launching the Adopt a Box campaign, a last chance to rescue and distribute the physical copies of this essential text before they disappear. You can help get a box of books into massage schools, libraries, practitioners, and educators' hands. And starting soon, join us for the SOMA Book Club, a monthly conversation where we'll read The Emergence and reflect on the stories, struggles, and triumphs that shaped our profession. Help us preserve massage history and carry it forward.
I've got to ask you though, just to go back to the terrorist attacks of 2001, you described it as, those really brought upstate and downstate together. And you described that as the anniversary tends to come around annually, there's still kind of that sense of coming together. Do you find that outside of around this early September time of year? Is there still like this feeling of unity, even these 24 years later?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure I could answer that. That's a really interesting question. I'd have to ponder that some more. I feel like as it approaches, most of us here in New York, we know when September 1st occurs, at least in my experience, September 11th is in proximity to that date. And you start to feel it at that time. In terms of the unity, I'm not sure I could say that it is still active because there have been so many other factors and influences then that do compromise that unity. So political factors and social factors and so forth. So yeah, I think I'm neutral on that one.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Uh, Let me ask you then, if you started massage school in New York in 2003, were
Mhm.
there any sort of like residual feelings or ways that the terrorist attacks impacted your education?
Yeah, I think again, I've always been empathetic and compassionate. So, at that time in 2003, I had been helping students with a lot of trauma. So, students who were beaten by other people or people who had had drug overdoses or attempted suicide or all of these things. So, I'm dealing with these constant factors. And then there were these major life events like September 11th. And additionally, even before then, the start of the twin wars with Iraq. I remember that moment when that occurred because my uncle was in the military and I knew he would be involved. So it was collectively all of these circumstances. And maybe because I had studied business, I could feel the impact of these events, but I didn't study psychotherapy, so I didn't know how to manage them, right? But I felt this need to help people. And so I think that massage for me was a tool that I recognized you could help people. The also great thing about massage is that it's a nice entry level into health care and functional medicine. So wherever you are in your state, in New York, for 1,000 hours, you can then achieve a certificate where you are actually a provider. You're providing treatment. So it's a nice gateway or entry level into healthcare practice.
Hmm,
Originally, I had even pondered that I might add nursing along the way, but I had opted not to do that because of education became such a priority. So I think for a lot of people, massage therapy is that gateway, that first step. And for many of us, we stay there, and some travel beyond or add other types of healthcare tools to their box.
gotcha. Interesting. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm feeling like this might be as good of a time as any to kind of circle back to those conversations, and we can take either one that you want, and we'll try to squeeze both of them in. But could you talk to me more either about the work with veterans or
Yeah.
trauma-informed care? Both of those I would like to hold space for.
I would love to talk about that. That's my wheelhouse. My
Maybe
passion, right? Yeah, let's do
if you
it.
don't have a preference of which one comes first, maybe chronological might be the best way to approach those two.
Sure. So interestingly, I think it was 2016 again. I was working at Crouse Health and I had developed a continuing ed program there for massage therapy because at that time in 2012, 13, New York made it a mandate that massage therapists, we have to have 12 hours of continuing ed for every year that we practice. So when we re-register every 3 years, we by law have had to have had 36 hours of CEs. So I developed this continuing ed program. And within that, my boss, Dr. Scott Treatman, wanted me to connect with ClearPath for Veterans. He was doing acupuncture and work out there, and he wanted to see how massage can help. When I visited them, I learned they wanted a sustainable massage therapy program there. And volunteers were joining but not staying because they were overwhelmed by their experiences immediately
Mm.
and they were underprepared. So they would join with enthusiasm and good intentions, but quickly fall off the radar. So I immediately thought, what if we created a continuing education class for massage therapists to help prepare them for this? But we add actually a clinical element to it where they have to do 12 or 16 hours of clinical work with the veterans on site. That'll give you your sustainable program and prepare the therapist. So that was the beginning of the Massage for Veterans program. And we started off with a 28-hour class that included 12 hours of clinical work, and it was every other Monday. We called it Massage Mondays. It quickly became very popular among the veterans when we had hard time filling the spots the first week because of the voodoo we were providing. We became waitlisted, and ClearPath was thrilled. The therapists were thrilled because they were taught traditional style education through a traditional method like lecture and so forth in the classroom, and then launched right into clinic, supervised by us. And we learned so much along the way. And the program eventually grew to 80 hours, and we continued with the clinic for 5 years. We ran it from 2013 to 2018. We provided for over 815 veterans and their family members. We actually had the privilege of taking two teams onto two active duty bases in New York, where we had military DoD clearance, and we could actually go on site and provide massage therapy to the military service members to introduce them to integrative healthcare. So it
Wow.
was a great experience. The program went dormant because the VA's whole health program grew. It started, way back when Dr. Tracy Gaudet, formerly of Duke, joined the VA, I think in 2013, and then helped develop the whole health program. Interestingly, at the time, the Syracuse VA became what's known as a design site for that launch. So imagine this, Dr. Gaudet from Duke joins the VA. They decide to make this entirely cultural transformation within the system to a circular model of whole health care for all veterans that would include therapies like massage. They started off with 19 flagship sites that would start offering these complementary care services. And then the next phase of the project were the design sites. And so Syracuse was a design site. At that time, I had already been inviting Syracuse members, clinicians to our program, our Massage for Veterans CE program. So when they became a design site, that was exciting because now massage therapists could get paid for their work, right? And really be clinicians. So our program helped them get their initial couple batches of massage therapists on board for their launch. And they started off with 200 referrals and then 400 referrals, and the program has grown since then. And that was great. I know the Syracuse VA is up to at some 1 thousands of referrals of veterans to massage therapy in the community. And so it's exciting to think that our program kind of helped be part of that process along the way. So the Massage for Veterans CE program went dormant because now the Syracuse program expanded. And at that time, Syracuse VA asked me to be their first massage therapist in the hospital. So I spent a couple of years in clinical care there and helping them get that program established, their med center massage therapy program, which is different than the community care referral program. So that was awesome. And we did that for a couple of years. And I think there may be up to 10 therapists now, if not more, that they have working in their system. Now, to today, we are actually reinstalled the Massage for Veterans program back at ClearPath because what we're finding is not all veterans are approved for massage through the VA system or are qualified for VA care. It's, people assume all veterans get VA care benefits, and that's not the case. And even those that do, it can be fractioned or determined by a ratio or an algorithm, so to speak. So our current program, our Northeast student program, we're now starting to have our students visit ClearPath, and we're offering massage therapy services to veterans there, which is nice because now we're able to provide for those that don't have access or easy access. It's not easy for veterans to go into a hospital setting. A lot of hospitals or garages to park take 20 minutes. They've got to walk or take a van shuttle to the VA center, which can be another 10 or 15. They wait in the lobby for 10 or 15. The VA appointments might be 40 minutes. So they go through a lot, and many of them are elderly and they don't have drivers. So having a program like the ClearPaths program does reduce any barriers of access, whether it be a geographic, transportation, or restriction of access to services.
I really appreciate that last bit. I've got to, full transparency, my understanding and my experience with VA is supremely limited. So I feel like there is a lot of rich in your last answer that I am just completely obstructed to. I want to ask though some things that did come up for me.
Mhm.
Very first, it started out as a CE program, it sounds like.
Correct. Mhm.
And you mentioned around 2012, the start of the 2010s anyway, New York had a mandate of 12 hours for every year, but your renewals are on a 3-year basis.
Correct. Mhm.
All right. Was there a CE mandate before this came along in the 2010s?
There wasn't a CE mandate for massage therapy. There was a CE mandate for other health professions, so psychotherapy and social work. And so, although many people at the time were frustrated that we had this, I think people assumed that New York were saying we weren't competent, that we needed to have these CE programs. I viewed it differently because when I dug into the research and found out that this was a mandate that they were applying to pretty much all health professions, it was actually a compliment to us that they recognize us in that realm or in that echelon, so to speak, of the other health professions. So I understand why New York did it, and like I said, my reasoning or my belief of why they mandated it was different than what many other people believed at the time.
Gotcha. Excellent. Yeah, and I would definitely agree with that too. It is the
Yeah.
compliment to already just view massage therapy in that light. Let me ask you, Nicole, was there much else going on in terms of massage therapy with the special population of veterans at the time?
Not that I knew of. I knew there was a woman also by the name, funny enough, Nicole Miller, in Rochester, New York, about an hour and a half away. So she was doing some veterans massage, and we called each other Nicole Squared because we started to meet and work together, and she visited our classes. But there was no formal program that I discovered at the time when I did some research. Um,
Gotcha. And
mhm.
then I'm just wondering, can you talk to me about how maybe like the CE program branched into this larger referral kind of program, it sounds like, is what I'm piecing together from the little
Yeah,
bit that I
right.
understand.
So what happened there? All right, so you're not, excuse me for a second as I take a moment to try to remember some of the numbers. It's been so long. So at that time, we had the clinic and the CE program at ClearPath for veterans, and ClearPath was friendly with the Syracuse VA. ClearPath is one of its purposes was to kind of be everything that the VA didn't always have the ability to be. So they were offering a lot of health and wellness, and they had a canine program, training and assigning service dogs to veterans who live with trauma.
Okay.
So they were friendly, and VA providers would refer people to ClearPath and vice versa. When we started the CE program, I had invited some of the medical providers at ClearPath to come in and teach some of our classes. So we have a whole class called Invisible Service Wounds, which is obviously about the psychological experience specific to combat veterans, but it involves all veterans. So Ann Canastra from the Syracuse VA came in and taught that part of that content for us because I am not a licensed mental health provider. So she came in and taught the anatomy and those components, and I taught the massage methodology. We also had their crisis coordinator come in and teach part of the class because they were trying to reach out and teach all healthcare providers how do you respond to a major mental health episode? How do you respond to people who might be having suicide ideation? And so we brought that in as an element, a mandatory element of our class. So we had these providers webbed into our educational program. And then a little birdie, Catherine, therapist, told me about how the VA was trying to start their whole health program at Syracuse. And they were really challenged because they didn't know how do I refer patients, right? Mind you, Syracuse has just been deemed a design site. Now they had the challenge, they had to send hundreds of patients into the community to massage therapists. So these folks that were doing the assignments were really overwhelmed and confused. So I called them and said, I understand you have a big task. Did you realize we have a whole program dedicated to massage for veterans, and some of your own clinicians teach the content? I have a list of students who are ready to support your patients. They were so excited. I gave them the list of all of our prior students, and they reported back to me. They did an initial batch. They did two initial batches. One was 200 veterans and one was 400. I can't remember which was first. But in essence, that summer, they batched out 600 veterans to the students in our program. And that's what started that Syracuse launch. And the feedback from folks was great on all accounts. The people who did the batch processing was great. The clinical providers who were talking to the veterans to get their feedback, it was all positive. The veterans were happy, and then the program just continued to morph from there. We continued to educate people in our program and send their names to the Syracuse VA. We also, our program, I invited massage therapists in our entire community to come to sessions with the Syracuse providers. So we actually had those batch providers meet with anybody interested in working with veterans, and they can talk about what it would be like, what it would look like paper-wise, organizationally, what it would look like emotionally, kind of all of those factors. So it was a really nice, beautiful moment in massage therapy history in Syracuse because it elevated and increased the need for massage therapy with one particular population and veterans. But I literally witnessed some of my students go from small practices to huge businesses and full because all of a sudden they were a referral recipient for the Syracuse VA. Some of the students in my program became veteran-specific providers where all they did was support veterans and they were full and waitlisted. So it was an exciting time for us. However, we learned a lot from that process, right? Not everything goes as smoothly as you can. We learned that, again, some people who were not trained to work with veterans became overwhelmed by some of their experiences. People were calling me because they had a veteran that triggered on a table and hunkered down and actually got in underneath. While they were lying flat on the table, they heard a truck, the slam of a big truck outside their office. They hunkered down, took the sheet, went in and barricaded themselves underneath the massage table,
Mm.
right? So we started to hear all kinds of stories like this, and people were reaching out to us, and we were able to give them some support and direction. And we also learned that massage therapy, we were prepared in a lot of ways to support veterans because going back to what we were saying earlier, we listened to everybody on the table and everybody. And these veterans really wanted someone to listen to them, to care for them, to show them compassion. So we're aces in that game. But it was the trauma piece that people were not prepared for. And that became, a significant part of my commitment and work in education was to develop opportunities for people to learn skills in trauma-informed care and emergency management. I can share another story with you with regards to all of this in that, and I think it was 2018, I developed a program called Warrior Hands. And Warrior Hands was a program I worked in conjunction with the Syracuse VA and Clear Path for Veterans. This was a specialized program and it invited veterans who were massage therapists from all over the country to come and get trained in the Massage for Veterans program. So I did this voluntarily, and we had 23 veterans from literally all over come in. And we also had some civilian massage therapists from our area participate too. So it was this cultural collaboration. And we were preparing these veteran LMTs to serve their own because we know that's what they want to do. I talk about freely about suicide awareness. And day two of my class, while I'm teaching, a student next to me received a suicide text from one of her friends who was a veteran. So this was a student, massage therapist, a student in the CE program, and also a veteran. And while she's in class, she received the text. They received these. And we actually, while I'm teaching, engaged the crisis protocol. We engaged the protocol through the support of one of my TAs, Sharon Wong, who went through the program with us and learned it. She went right into action with ClearPath, contacted the person's local emergency response, and we learned an hour later that that person was safe. There was a positive interception. But I framed this because I tried to explain why we weren't necessarily prepared, right? That we had this great, amazing abundance of now thousands of veterans that were launched into the community for massage therapy, but it exposed some of the weaknesses among us and the cracks in our experiences and how we can be prepared. So now I encourage all massage therapists. I don't care if you work with veterans or not, you really should work with your local suicide education organizations and learn those skills because you never know when it's going to come from. Since then, working with veterans specifically, I have also intercepted two other people. One who had exhibited suicide ideation. So in the very beginning stages of suicide, consideration, and one that actually had a plan. And I had learned that later from the clinicians, if I let that person go that day home, if I did the massage and let them go, there was a likelihood they would not have survived the day. And then additionally, I did a lot of work simultaneously with perinatal anxiety and depressive patients at Crouse Health. And even on a day where we were doing a support group and supporting moms in a support group, a person came who we later found out was in a state of psychosis. And again, I did that protocol at that time and learned from the providers. They called me that day to say, congratulations, you very likely had intercepted suicide and infanticide because they had their child with them. I feel vulnerable at moments like this, but I do like to share these because I want our profession to understand massage therapists are at risk of encountering these situations, and we really need to be prepared for them. And you as a person need to be prepared to be resilient because you were likely to encounter them.
What a weight to carry. And thank you, yeah, for sharing that. Because I'm definitely myself certainly not prepared for situations such as that. I don't want to take advantage of your vulnerability, Nicole, but in situations like that, does that also bring up some of those feelings of like survivor's guilt and things like that you've struggled with before?
Um, I'm not sure if it's guilt or if it's because I have such a need to help people that it makes me just feel more vulnerable and full and less prepared. And so when they happen, you spend hours, days, or months afterwards thinking, what could I have done differently? Even though you did things right, right? So I think what it ended up doing was generating an obsession to even learn more, read more, understand more, and connect. And so that's kind of the fallout, if you will, with that. But I have to keep reminding myself, and this is so important, there's only so much we can do. We're a massage therapist. We have a scope of practice. And when you delve into this world, and especially with respect to social healthcare or psychological healthcare, you have to be really careful about how you interact with people and what role you play and what that scope is. I have found the best thing you can do is to align yourself with mechanisms, tools, referral sources, and providers for which to reach out to. So you're prepared to, engage that immediate support and you don't take on responsibility. I've also learned I have a couple friends who work in psychotherapeutic healthcare, and I've learned to connect with them and process some of these situations with them, and that certainly helps.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like there isn't quite enough widespread information available in our profession about these sorts of things. I think I have just a few more follow-up questions in terms of our conversation about veterans, Nicole.
Yeah.
It sounds like kind of a perfect match between the two, and it sounds like this wasn't something that you kind of had to sell the VA an interest in massage therapy because they were already pursuing it as a part of integrative care. Yes? Okay.
Correct.
Can you talk just a little bit about that? And maybe if people aren't familiar with the idea or the concept or have misinformation about integrative care, could you maybe give us just like a quick brief rundown about that?
With regards to the VA, is that
Sure.
what, yeah. So I'll try to be brief.
No worries.
So Dr. Tracy Gaudet is really the person, and I'm going to take a moment and share a book with you. So
Sure.
this is back in 2006, the Duke Encyclopedia of Medicine, right?
Wow.
And back at that time, I actually bought this then, and I became entranced with this model, the circular model of healthcare. And that was developed by Dr. Gaudet and some of the other folks at Duke, which was one of the biggest champions of integrative health. Dr. Gaudet joined the VA system. They had visited with her for consultation because they wanted to transform their healthcare, and they were tampering with the idea of a integrative model. So they visited with her as well as others, but then they appreciated her work so much, they encouraged her to join their system. And she did. And she's really one of the authors or the architects of that whole health program at the VA. And so she brought that there. And the VA has hundreds of med centers across the nation. And these med centers vary. They vary in character, they vary in capacity, what they can offer on site. Some have emergency care, some do not. But at the time, the VA was being challenged with problems within the systemic problems like long wait times and lack of care and inconsistent care among VA systems and maybe not being heard by patients. So they wanted to have a whole experience of transformation. So they decided whole health was that piece for them, that large ingredient, so to speak. Dr. Gaudet designed the system, and basically what she said was it's not just a matter of creating a system, you have to motivate people and prepare them. So they created whole teams, whole health teams within all the med centers. And these teams were individuals who trained people to become mentors, or they trained physicians within the system, or they trained the referral providers, all of these folks within the system, what whole health was and how it can support their patients and their work. And then they became a referral source. So if a pain management doctor wanted their patient to use opioids less, they may refer them to whole health, which would qualify them and think about what help this person. And maybe part of that referral would be to a massage therapist to try an alternative to pain. This was great because overall, this system of having whole health as its own entity within the system actually consider patients and develop treatment plans for them in conjunction with their primary care plans, then permits them to try things like massage and made it accessible and barrier-free for these veterans. And there are reports that the VA generated as a result of this process. So some of the work at Syracuse, for instance, some of the hundreds and thousands of patients that went to the massage therapist in the community, we gained feedback from those visits and we gained feedback from the clinical visits in the hospital. And that helped to result in some of the studies and reports that later showed that veterans who went to the whole health program had a reduction in opioid use and had a reduction in frustrations with their healthcare planning, had better satisfaction from the providers, moved less, exercised more, all of these factors. So it's exciting to think that some of that work resulted in that information later, but it really all generated because of the early work of Dr. Tracy Gaudet.
Okay, awesome. Now, where are we at as far as massage therapy for veterans
Yeah.
right now at this point? How has that changed since you started with that CE program? And if I could ask you to maybe make predictions, what do you see or hope for the future in terms of massage for veterans?
So that's a great question. And when you're asking about, where we are now, are you meaning specifically to Syracuse or the whole nationally, or what are your thoughts there?
I would love for you to run with both of those if you feel so
Sure.
moved. But I also, because what I see, we have like a one thing that I see a lot in our circles that we talk about in massage is we have like this definition of massage therapy from the DoD, correct? And
Mhm.
you know, because sometimes those conversations come back to, well, who's defining what we do? Is it us, the profession, or is it these systems? So I'm gonna let you take all of that prompt and run with it however you see.
Okay. Yeah. So let's take a look at Syracuse. Way back in the heyday when they first started doing those batch processing, it was exciting and the veterans were coming back loving their massage and more referrals. And it was just such an exciting time for everybody. But I think it kind of leveled out. And simultaneously, at the same time, other VAs in the VISN, so the VA system is broken up in geographical, what they call VISNs areas. So other VAs in the VISN were watching Syracuse because again, Syracuse is a design site. So they weren't on board yet, but they were watching it. And I think kind of what happened, and I do not have the statistics, this is just based on reflections and comments of others, and I'll kind of generalize them. One of the early complications was when a veteran was launched into the whole health, they were receiving simultaneously acupuncture, chiropractic, massage, and nutrition. So they certainly received, and the statistics and data shows that they did benefit from the whole health model compared to the conventional model of medicine, right? That could be established. But what could not be established was out of those modalities or treatments, which was necessary or truly effective for the person. So that kind of became problematic because now they had this excitement generated and people going to multiple practitioners, but we really didn't have an understanding of the efficacy of all of those particular things. So Syracuse then kind of took some time. This is the point when they leveled out, when they decided to be more mindful about how do you launch people or assign them to the various modalities. And I do believe in that more cautious approach. As much as I would love everybody to have access to all of those modalities all the time, it's not realistic. A lot of these folks are elderly. It takes a lot for them to get to appointments. Some of these veterans already have 8 appointments in a day between pain management, orthoped, and PT in their primary. And now you want to add three more. So we needed to really start to think about what is the right recipe or plan. And I dare say, too, that there are times when we need to graduate our patients or clients, that massage is not always the right or the best thing for them. And if you have to choose, maybe there are other things that are better, like exercise, right? Or other methods. So we had this period of leveling out. And meanwhile, some of these other VAs in proximity to Syracuse were watching this thing and oh my gosh, they're spending a lot of money and time. And now, it's not sustainable, right? To do it to that level for everybody. So I think they became better and more proficient in terms of how they allocated people to the various integrative health modalities. And I think that became a systemic thing as well. Syracuse, as a design site, that was the purpose, was to give the major system data about processing and what happened there. Nowadays, when you look at the VA system, I've been watching very closely the last year because we do know that DoD medicine and VA medicine, both of those systems, and mind you, the VA is the largest medical system in the world, United States VA. They are influenced significantly by major factors, including funding, politics, right? Legislation, all of these things. And we've had a major change politically in our country. So I'm curious to see how that will, if that will impact what happens with the whole health system as well as the massage therapy component of that. I'm not saying that it's a suspect or that it will happen, but it's a worry of mine that we might see a reduction in massage for veterans. And that's one of the reasons why I liked reinstalling the ClearPath mechanism in place because of that leveling out. We've seen over the years, originally veterans in the original launch of the program were getting 12, 18 massages a year. Now they're getting 6, right? They saw a reduction in massage, or not everybody was getting massage as easily as they were early on. So consider those factors and then the risk of a change because of political factors. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of reinstall the Massage for Veterans program and now using that Northeast program for which to do it because it can be very sustainable. And right now we have students going out there 3 times a month offering services to the veterans. So I'm hoping that being in place that can help with some of that potential change.
What I'm hearing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like when our larger, more broader systems fail or regress, perhaps,
Yes.
you can focus in on a smaller community that you have more access to keep certain things functional and in place for people who need it.
At 100%.
Let's go ahead and transition into a question about trauma-informed care, your other bailiwick.
Trauma-informed care is something that we have supported since the dawn of humans, right? If you look at the work of Dr. Robert Sapolsky from UCLA, he's written a few books and he talks a lot about stress and anxiety and trauma. And then Shelley Taylor from Stanford and Peter Levine and all of these things. Trauma has been there ever since we have been bipedal walking primates. And so
Talk about history.
you can't have humans without having trauma. But simultaneously, massage has always been there at that same time, right? We know touch is instrumental to the mammalian existence. So I think they've always been married and partnered in some degree. We're now at a point where we're starting to understand how we impact trauma. We've always known we have. It's just not always understanding the how we do. So massage therapists are an amazing group of people who have supported for millenniums humanity with relation to trauma. And we are, it's our game, and we continue to have the skills and the empathy and compassion necessary to do it. My hope is that by understanding better the how, we can elevate that and make it even a better experience for both provider and recipient.
Let me ask you, how did you first get started? Because it's kind of it can be used as a buzzword. People have a lot of misunderstandings about trauma informed. So
Right.
maybe I should ask you to give us kind of like an intro to trauma informed care. You give us some of your thoughts and definitions about it. And then how did you what was the progression like to how you got started with trauma informed care with massage therapy?
Sure. Well, as we talked about, there's been these experiences along the way, and then the presentation by Bonnie Owens, who worked with 911 first responders, really was a catalytic moment for me in this whole process. And then along the way, I met folks like Dr. Christine Kowaleski from Crouse Health and Sonia Murdoch from um, an organization that supports women and humans who have perinatal anxiety and depression, and some of those have trauma. What I've learned throughout the years is you have to be careful when you use the term trauma. The definition of trauma from a clinical perspective indicates that the person who's living with the trauma has to have experienced an event or a moment where they felt their life was in danger or compromised, or what they were seeing, someone else's life was endangered and compromised. And this is very different than severe anxiety or severe depression. So sometimes people use the word trauma and maybe they're not really talking about true trauma, right? So trauma, it had to have been life-threatening. The reason why that's important to delineate is because when you listen to people who've been through traumatic experiences, who've had that moment when their life has flashed before their very eyes, they talk about being in a whole nother dimension of life. It's a surreal moment.
Mhm.
And because of that experience, not that we want to minimize those other psychotherapeutic experiences in life, but it really is quite different. So we have to be careful when we use the word trauma and how we manage it. And from Dr. Kowaleski, I learned when it comes to mental health, there is mild, moderate, severe um, cases or divisions or levels, if you will. And then above the severe, you get into the areas of trauma or psychosis or these other types of experiences. So they're in a whole nother level. So it's really important to understand that as a provider, because you need to be mindful about what is your capacity to support those levels. And when you get into that level of psychosis or trauma, it really does take a very significant skill set. Now I'm going to be vulnerable at this moment and share with you that I've actually had a traumatic life experience myself. And that happened in 2008. Was pregnant with twins and I developed preeclampsia and I delivered them via C-section. And then post-surgery, post-birth, I developed toxemia. So I went from preeclampsia to severe preeclampsia to toxemia. In most cases, at birth, the preeclampsia will resolve, but in rare cases, it'll morph into a more concerning situation. At day 5 postpartum, I blew a PE, a pulmonary embolism. So I had this one of the top maternal killers
Yeah.
in existence and occurring. And then that night, it was a Sunday night and it was 5:17 p.m. I developed the first major symptom of the pulmonary embolism at the same time. So that night, I landed in the hospital with two of the top maternal killers simultaneously. And I was that person being sustained. I was lying on a hospital bed, being sustained by a team of critical care, emergency care providers. I had that team in the room, and my husband's there tearing up and crying because we all know that my life is in jeopardy. And I had that moment when your life flashes before your eyes. I know exactly what that means. And as I share with people, when that moment occurred to me, everything in the room was a green tint, and I don't know why, but it was a green tint. I didn't have the hues or the ability to decipher colors like we do, but simultaneously, every moment in my life, it's like the room filled with them. Like I could visually see every single moment. And as quickly as they appeared, they went away. And it was a shocking moment. And I realized then the gravity of the situation. Like, not only was this team trying to sustain me and doing all their emergency functions, I'm on this hospital bed and I have this simultaneous moment, as I realized I'm in a grave circumstance. And I had said to the nurse here, whose her only job was measuring my blood pressure and counting it out, at that moment, I hear her say 210 over 105, and I realize, oh, there's not a lot of room left, right? I don't have much more to go. This is climbing, and I'm like at the max. So I looked over at her and I said, I need you to not count out those numbers. I can't hear them right now. And it wasn't long after that they sedated me and kind of and put me under, which was a good thing because I think the anxiety was contributing to all this. And it was the next morning that I learned I had the PE and the toxemia and all of that good stuff. So I ended up with perinatal anxiety and depression, severe format, and trauma, post-traumatic stress as a result of that experience. And that's what fueled most of my work, that point going forward, working with perinatal patients and chemically dependent patients and veterans and all of those other folks who live with trauma. And it became the my motivation. It became my educator. It became all of the above. That's why we say you have to be careful if when you say you have trauma, you shouldn't use that term unless you've really had that moment because it is a whole nother experience. It's like a third dimension, fourth dimension, if you will.
For sure. Oh my gosh, Nicole. I could talk to you forever, I imagine. Uh,
Right? So, yeah.
First of all, how does that impact your life moving forward to be living infinite moments all in one, right? Have I got that understanding of what you were going through at the time correct in my mind?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. The way realizing how powerful the human brain is, because like right now I'm 50, 54. I have to even count back. So I'm 54 and my memory is getting worse, right? My students laugh at me because I'm forgetting things here and there. I could go to get something from the closet. But at that moment and afterwards, I realized, wow, we don't even use our human brain to a thousandth of its capacity because to have all those memories occur at the same time, I realized how amazing it is and how strong it is. So that has helped me having that thought where I realize the brain is powerful and you have to learn how to allow it to support you in the best way possible and not let it become a monster, right? Or not let it control you or overwhelm you. So it took a lot of work to do that along the way. And I only am able to do what I am today because of the people who helped me along the way, like the Dr. Koleskis and the authors that I read, as well as many others.
Yeah. Um,
Sorry.
no, I'm sorry. I hear something like that. I hear someone explain an experience like that, and I can't. How have you been able to accomplish all that you've been able to? I mean, like, how do you keep going from something like that? I'm in awe because I feel like I don't have the fortitude that perhaps, like, is it just you have no other choice to do something like that, or is it kind of your constitution, Nicole?
I think it's both. I'm a farmer's daughter. We grew up working 7 days a week, so I'm a hard worker and I like to work. But there is a point when it's you don't really have a choice, as you were saying, because it becomes part of your fabric. When you live with trauma, just like being a massage therapist becomes your identity, so does living with a trauma. It becomes your identity at all times. You can never get rid of it. It's a matter of managing it. So you learn you have to. And I think the reason why I learned to live with it, because I had babies at the time when this occurred and children that were depending on me. So I wonder sometimes if I didn't have them, how would I be living with trauma today? So they became a motivation for me to do well, live well, and try to be better, as has massage therapy too. I think I'm motivated a lot by that. And also just helping others helps you recover too, right? So when you're helping others through their journey, you're helping yourself along the way, and it helps you become stronger every day.
Yeah. Um, Sorry, I just have to take breaths through this
Yeah.
and like kind of because my brain is kind of fried and scrambled right now. From not just especially this part of our conversation, but everything that's come before it too, Nicole.
Yes.
I'm going to have to, maybe it's just me, but I'm going to have to go back and listen to this episode again and again and again because I just feel like this is one of those that is layered with a lot of deliciousness.
Mhm.
I want to know, first of all, are you okay now? Because this happened uh, in 2008. This is before you had your breakthrough with your struggles with mental health and survivor's guilt in 2016. So I'm just wondering, like, that's, I just,
Well, and you, as when we talk about ingredients, there's no doubt in my mind that this experience was probably one of the big ingredients as well to the autoimmune, right? It all everything's weaved together. So autoimmunes don't just occur, right? There's usually a history behind them. So I think that's definitely one of the primary factors in that experience. But you get to a point where you realize either I can just continue to feel bad, or I can start to work on it and feel better. And I have to say too, my husband was a huge factor in all of this because he's an incredibly patient person and supportive and compassionate. And he gave me a lot of space to process. I think that's really helpful because I work with people whose partners don't necessarily give them that space. And so they're kind of wrapped in a bubble of trauma or whatever they're dealing with. And so it becomes just, I want to say sedentary, but just habitual for them. They can't get better. But my husband didn't uh, permit that type of experience. He allowed me the opportunity to process it and try things and grow and fail and do all of those things. And he just stayed with me by my side throughout it. So I think if he wasn't in my life, I'd be in a different place right now.
God, that's great. Yeah, awesome. And how about the twins? Were they okay through all of this as well? Because that's a pretty, not to make light of the word, that's a traumatic birth experience too, also to go through, right, for them in their infancy.
Yeah, so it definitely is. When you look at Dr. Christine Kowaleski's work, she does a lot of work based on the ACEs model, adverse childhood events. And what we learn from ACEs is that when children or babies have major life events, if they have, a series of life events before the age of 18, it can impact their health later. It can make them more susceptible to obesity or diabetes or trauma or mental health problems. And Dr. Kowaleski talks about how perinatal anxiety depression is really considered, in her opinion, an original ACEs event for children, even though it didn't explicitly happen to the children. So I do think about that, but I'm also comforted at the fact that in the first month of my children's lives, I couldn't really hold them. I couldn't do those things. And while I was in the hospital and while I was recovering, we lived on an amazing street in Fayetteville, New York. And my mother-in-law was at the home with our home with the twins, and my husband placed a call that night at the hospital, that emergent night, to one of the neighbors and said, Maureen, Nicole's in the hospital. She's going to be here a while. Can you go help mom with the babies? My mother-in-law said it was like an army. She looked out the window and this group of people came marching up the street to the house because Maureen texted. They created this texting chain. And they all literally walked out of their houses and marched up the street. And they came into the house and they sat down in the living room and they construed a plan of shifts every 4 hours. And they had a written calendar. I still have it. And every 4 hours, a new person from the street would come in and help with the feedings, with the changing and the childcare. So my children, even though mom had this traumatic experience, didn't lay in a bed for days, if not weeks. They were held by people. And so, as a massage therapist now, I am so just entranced by that thought that at that time, difficult time, they were loved and they were loved physically through touch and holding. So I find so much comfort and empowerment by that. And I tell the kids that even to this day, they're 17 now, and we have a picture in our kitchen of them at 1 month old and all the people that held them. And this is a group of like 20 people, and them in the center being held. And I constantly refer to that picture and that experience to remind them, how it was for them early on,
Oh my God, Nicole.
right?
I've got chills on my body. It almost sounds unreal.
It does,
And
right?
talk about it takes a village. What
Mhm.
what an interesting way to come into this world. I'm floored right now, Nicole. I could almost cry. What a story. Thank you for sharing that very personal story with me here.
You're welcome. Thank you for giving me the chance to share it. I hope it helps others.
Well, and that's the kind of story that doesn't get shared just anywhere. And I really hope that we can continue to capture stories like that here because you never know who else is going through something similar or something totally different that they really can take what you've gone through and experienced and build themselves and live a better life because of it. So
Yeah,
that's what it's all about to me.
100%.
I've got a few closing thought. I don't want it to get emotional, but I do have to take us into some closing thoughts. When you look back on the last 20 years, which God, how do you even, I don't know how you'll answer this, but when you look back at that career, what are you most proud of?
Hmm. That's a tough one. That's a tough question, because pride is an interesting concept, right? I think if I had to sum it up into to one thing, I would say the massage for veterans clinic that we did at Claire Path is the thing I'm most proud of because that just resulted in bringing together so many people and with different journeys and experiences. And that program became a seed for so many others. And like, for instance, like you think of the Warriors Hands program where massage therapists came in to learn in that program. We learned that some of the therapists there were victims of military sexual trauma and they did not know it. They didn't know there was a name for it. And some of those students, massage therapists, now are bonded together through this experience. And now many of them are doing traumatic work in their communities and other states. So those are the moments that I'm most proud of because and I hate to use the word proud, I'd say most happy about because that's what you hope is that you're taking a baton and you're relaying it to another person. I say constantly to our students, my hope is that our hindsight becomes your foresight, right? That you learn from us and then you can use our hindsight, our experience to help you navigate. And our roles as educators and mentors is to give you as much as we can now so that when you start, you're studying at a much higher and better platform than where we started. So I think that's hopefully the answer to your question is passing that baton to others.
Absolutely. And I love that. We're going to latch on to that quote from you. Want that on a Soma t-shirt. Our hindsight should be your foresight. What a great one.
Yeah, I say it all the time, because, and maybe it's because I'm a parent of teenagers who they don't like to listen to me and I get the eye rolling sometimes, you know. But when they hear it from someone else, the same concept, it becomes so amazingly powerful to them, right? So my students are my chance to talk and be actually listened to. But yeah, so I say to them because again, it goes back to what I was saying before. I didn't know about spas, so I wanted to go and learn, right? I had to develop some of that. So when we have wisdom, we have information, we have experience, we really should share it with others because then they will grow to heights higher than what we can grow if we give them that platform to start with.
Okay, if you could record one historical figure's account of massage therapy, someone who is no longer with us, who
Mhm.
would you choose and perhaps why?
When I think about history, there's so much we need to learn from historical figures. I think one of the people that I would like to learn from is Auntie Margaret Mikado, who is one of the most known practitioners of Lomi Lomi massage therapy and massage. And I think it would be interesting to learn from her because what we know about Hawaiian massage is that, again, it's an antiquated, form of healthcare that had been practiced for generations, and it went dormant with the colonization of Hawaii, right? And much of those traditions and practices were shared privately among family members and generations. And Auntie Margaret was one of the people who brought it back out into public view and the public realm, so to speak, allowing many people to learn from it. I think she would be a really interesting person to speak to because I wondered for her, how did it feel when you knew that this was held so privately and intimately within your culture and community to then take that leap and share openly with people, even people who were not Hawaiian, you know? I'd love to learn from her about what that felt like and what happened during that time and what we can extract from that experience and apply and how we can apply it to other massage experiences.
I'm sure that would be a rich cultural conversation too, right?
Right.
Great choice, Nicole. What about who would you like to hear on this podcast next? Anyone come to mind that you think should be interviewed or has an important story to tell?
Dr. Nikki Monk.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. Because in research, when I went to school, the person that we were told about most often was about Dr. Tiffany Fields from the Touch Research Institute in Miami, Florida. And now you fast forward today, I think Dr. Monk is that equivalent. Like she is one of the folks who is really champion massage therapy research and helping us understand why we are so helpful in how our work works. And so I think she would be a great person to listen to.
Absolutely. See if we can pin her down for an interview.
If you need some assistance, let me know. I'd be more than happy to advocate for you if I can.
Perfect. Well, I this episode's going to be advocacy enough. I can already. All right, before we go, what are you up to these days? How could listeners learn more about your work or make connection with you or support anything that you're doing right now?
Sure. So how we would love support from others is if you have ideas of what we can do in terms of massage therapy education, we are all ears, right? So we have a fairly new program at Northeast, and we're really trying to shape it to be part of the fabric of massage therapy in terms of as a profession and all the elements within. So if you have ideas regarding legislation or statistics or data or research or even the education of massage, any ideas relative to any of those factors or ingredients, we'd love to hear from you. Additionally, I would say be ready. Be ready for today's massage therapists and be ready for our students and be ready to accept some of them and to help guide them in that first period of when they graduate and they too feel very vulnerable. My work today is I'm working a lot on developing this program and creating it as a strong foundation for growth in our field. We're working to expand the options for massage therapy education within the construct of our program. And I can't speak too much about it right now, but I will be able to soon. And also continuing with the Massage for Veterans program, and I'm going to expand more on our my continuing education endeavors as well, with hopes to help other people learn more about trauma and work with veterans in the future. So you're welcome to email me at nmiller@northeastcollege.edu.
Perfect. And finally, Nicole, is there anything I can't imagine that we didn't cover that you would like to add? The mic is all yours.
Yeah. No, I think we covered a lot and more, more so than what I anticipated too. So thank you for giving me the chance to connect. And, I just echo that concept. If anybody would like to connect or learn, I'm all for it. I think we are stronger together. And by working together, we not only help ourselves, we help our students, we help our future patients. So I always, always invite the opportunity for collaboration. So, and thank you so much.
Amen, Nicole. Amen to that. Have you ever done like keynote for AMTA? You'd make a great keynote speaker.
Actually, interestingly, I was awarded the Humanitarian Award from AMTA National, and I did speak at their closing panel back in DC at AMTA National Convention, and then I have also taught at state conventions as well as national as well in terms of CE or specific classes. So I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun.
Good. We
Yeah.
need more of you out in the world. I'm just on fire from this conversation, and I really appreciate your generosity in letting us go over a little bit of extra time today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider donating to the Society of Massage Archives so we can continue to bring you this episode and other resources to fulfill our mission of preserving and integrating the historical knowledge of massage therapy's professional advocacy and traditional techniques to guide and enrich our contemporary practices. Thank you. You have been listening to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives. You can learn more about the Society at societyofmassagearchives.org. We are also on Facebook and Instagram. Do you know someone whose hands have helped shape the practice of massage? If you or someone you know would make a great guest for future episodes of this podcast, please email the Society at societyofmassagearchives@gmail.com. Society of Massage Archives, all one word, @gmail.com.